07 Citizens Black here from Casa Black Gaming, hoping everyone is keeping it positive despite all the craziness in the world. So the past week I've been focusing on delivery missions in 3.18 with my intention of leveling up the rep to see how well it pays and just how well it's working after we heard that many of the missions were worked on with the goal of them being fixed so you didn't have moments where you turn in quests and they just won't work. And while this is not the guide, I wanted to share some of the fun times I have had so far and maybe make them entertaining. I myself enjoy content from creators who just show what they did in the verse, because anytime you watch these, there's always bound to be some shenanigans that results where things go wrong, and that is exactly what I experienced more than once. And so without any further attempts to stretch this out, let's go ahead and get to my story entitled A Tale of Delivery and Woe. Our story starts with me attempting to pick up deliveries from derelict outposts. Now, for those of you who do not know, we did get a butt-ton more derelict outposts all over Stanton, which are similar in scope to those that we got on Microtech in 3.17.2. Now, for whatever reason, the missions team thought it would be cool to put these low-paying crate deliveries in the derelicts, and so me being one who wants to test all aspects of delivery, I set out to attempt these missions. I will go into more detail and some how-tos and how not-tos in my guide, but for now, I just wanted to show you some of those attempts. So we start with my very first attempt. Now, keep in mind, most of these outposts are out in the middle of nowhere, so finding jump points to drop your warp can be fun. But once you're actually on the approach, that is where the fun can truly begin. Now, as I approached, I began scanning for the Cutlass Black that I know can either already be at the outpost or will be making its way down to the outpost. We did have this feature in 3.17.2, but it wasn't always working as well as it does here in 3.18, with some very good improvements added to make these cutties more formidable when these servers are hitting on all gears. Now, another part of the AI that can also be on point when the servers are running well are the ground patrols that you will find camped out at these derelicts. What I like to do is clear out those that I can see using my ship. Now, I'm not afraid to admit that my FPS skills are lacking, and so taking them out from above just alleviates some risk, especially when I'm not geared the best. The Cutlass that I was in is not the easiest when it comes to trying to shoot tiny targets on the ground, so there was some trial and error there as I grew more accustomed to the spread and aiming. Now, ultimately, I found third person to be the easiest way to shoot the ground targets, and so I took out all that I could see. So with the ground targets eliminated, I decided to try to land close to the delivery box to make it easy without having to leave the ship if possible. Now, earlier that day I had already seen my ship wanting to launch without me in it due to the high winds, so I was a bit nervous about getting out here, seeing as how dusty and obviously windy things were. Feeling like the ship was in a good spot, I got out of my seat and went to the side door and opened it. These side doors make for great access for the outpost, but also can be dangerous. I quickly took damage before I could really get my bearings and used up my only equipped med pen. I did have one more in my ship's storage though. I really wanted to take this guy out without getting back in my seat and using the Cutty's weapons, but Deadeye Dan was on fire and I sucked. So after being shot a second time, I fumbled around trying to get my med pen out of the ship's inventory and into my hand to use it, and I was maybe a split second too late. So now I had some big decisions here to make. This is my alt account and this only has two ships, the Cutlass and an Aurora. So I decided to grab the Aurora and go back out to reclaim my ship and complete the delivery pickup. So I took the long ass flight back out to the outpost and of course immediately saw my Cutlass and my death marker, which was a relief. Upon arriving, I saw that more of the NPCs had respawned, which would need to be taken out along with Deadeye Dan. Now, I was relieved to not see the NPC Cutlass had arrived, as that would have been harder to deal with my Aurora, which I might add, along with my Cutlass, have not been upgraded from their stock loadout due to the wipe with 3.18.1, so my Aurora literally only had 2 guns on it. I dispatched all of the NPCs, including good old Deadeye Dan, who was not too keen on me using my ship's weapon on him, instead of facing him like a man. With my enemies vanquished, I turned to a new problem. I had not actually landed my cutlass, but had just been hovering, so now I needed to figure out how to get it back on the ground or me to somehow jump from the Aurora over to it. I first tried to line up the Aurora door with the opening side of the cuddy, but I could not quite line them up to where I felt comfortable like it would work, and the last thing I needed to do was also have the Aurora up high where I could not get into it either, so basically getting your left shoe stuck in the tree after trying to throw it up to get the right one out. I next had the brilliant idea to try to use the Aurora to push the cutlass down to the ground. This could have gone really bad, which is why I was gentle, but the cuddy simply wouldn't budge. I had no choice but to try something else, but first I spotted another NPC walking around the back. After blowing them away, I parked my Aurora and ran over to the Cutlass to put the ramp down to see if I would just simply be able to jump into the back. The ramp button almost proved a defeat, but I finally got it and the ramp came down, and after a couple of jumps, I was back in my Cutlass, where my body was still at. Now, wise beyond my years, I shut the side cargo door before going over to my body to get my gear back, or so I tried. The inventory was acting buggy with some of the newer click functionality not quite working, so I did what I could. I soon got back into my seat of the Cutlass and flew over to kill a couple more NPCs because I still needed to get that delivery box, and I also wanted some of their gear, which I had earned at this point. After killing them, I landed my ship again and this time exited out the back ramp to go and grab the box before I did anything else. The mission was for the box after all, and everything else had just been a distraction at this point. I was barely off of the ship when I noticed another Ninetales I had either missed or who had spawned back in the time it took me to land. Seriously guys, these NPCs are spawning way more than they did back in 3.17, and with me having no more med pins and no time for my awful aim, I was going to take them out with my ship. One of my constant preachings is to always be prepared, yet here I was ill prepared indeed. I killed another NPC with my ship, landed again, and then made my way back out the ramp to get this damn box. Once again, I heard NPCs while I was retrieving the box, and so I kind of dropped the box and tried to get back into my ship. But of course, once again, I had not done things well with this mission and had landed terribly. The NPC must have saw me trying to jump into the back of my ship, because this is what I heard. Now, after seeing that I was not going anywhere and the NPCs sounding like they were getting closer, I decided to use my Aurora to get back on the ramp, but of course, nothing was going right. The Aurora would not let me get into the open side that was safer, so I had to go around to the vulnerable side and have my back to the NPCs. I was able to get into the Aurora and then proceeded to use it to kill more NPCs, or maybe it was just a single NPC. These things seem to be coming out of the woodworks. I then made my way over to the Cutlass where I tried to land somewhat on the ramp, but as you can see, I made a mess of that and was lucky I did not lose the Aurora after it went belly up. After a little bit of finagling, I was able to right the ship and put it against the back of the Cutlass, and then hopped from the Aurora over to the Cutlass. Now what I lack in FPS skill, I make up for in resourcefulness and determination. I tried to grab the delivery box, but it seemed to be behind something, so I instead turned my attention to getting some of those NPCs I had killed. I used my side door again, and this time started tractoring those guys right into the ship. I really wanted the gun on the ground. As you can see, I was trying to tractor it up, but then I heard heavy gunfire, which was not coming from an NPC. The Ninetales Cutlass had arrived. With a slight bit of panic having hit, I ran back to the cockpit with the steady sound of gunfire in my ears, and all I could think was how much of a beating could my Cutlass take before it was disabled. As I got into my seat, I heard an explosion and feared that I was too late, that my ship had been disabled already. But I persisted, hopefully more so than my ship seemed to be. Once I was in the seat, my view changed back to third person, and I could see that the Aurora was the victim of the explosion that I heard. Thank you for your sacrifice, little ship. As I gained elevation, I shut my rear hatch as I took fire, now being the sole focus of the enemy Cutlass. I needed to gain altitude so I could assess the situation. Looking at my dash finally, I was able to see that my rear shields had only taken minor damage and the body had not seemed to have taken much in the way of damage, at least from the explosion, which is what I was worried about, so I was good to go. I soon circled around and decided to try some missiles toward the target because even though I'm not bad at ship combat, those upgraded NPC Cutlasses rarely miss, and I was sporting ballista ammo, which I'm terrible at doing ammo control with, so I knew if I did not take it out quickly, I would be stuck with just those 2 laser reheaters. I fired 3 missiles and had trouble maintaining a lock for some reason, and so those were a waste. I fired another after I had briefly seen my lock come up, and it too went into the ground. Now I don't know if the Cutlass was kind of bugged out or what, because it wasn't moving and my shots just wouldn't lock. After blowing through half of my missiles, I decided to get closer and just unload on the ship with my guns. I ate through their shields, but they also ate through mine. Now, on watching this again, I think I should have just backed up, recharged, and unloaded again, but I flew off instead, which prolonged the fight and allowed the enemy to regain its shields just as I was doing. Soon the enemy Cutlass left the outpost, and once I felt like my shields were up to snuff, I opened fire, using up the last little bit of ballistic ammo pretty fast. The enemy Cutlass had taken quite a bit of damage and their rear shields were almost down and they seemed to be on the run, so this was the perfect opportunity to finish them off. They turned around, opened fire on me and me on them, and we jousted a little, with me mainly following their lead as they seemed to be on some sort of predestined path. They flew up pretty fast, and as I closed the gap, I began opening fire, and then poof, they were gone. And no, I didn't kill them, they just despawned. Now I scanned and looked to see if they had reappeared back down below, but nothing. So with the threat now gone, it was time to go back down and finally retrieve the delivery package. After making my way down to the outpost, I came within less than 100 meters of the package's location and tried to get eyes on it. After seeing where it looked like it was located, I landed on the side of a hill, still not quite learning my lesson about proper landing, and went to see if I could tractor the package from its location. Off the side open doorway, I used my tractor beam, seeing that the package was a mere 24 meters away, but nothing came. It looked like the package was probably inside of the rock. I decided to move the ship again to see if I could get a better angle on the package. After repositioning, I went to the back of my ship and moved to the edge of my ramp and was within 9 meters of it, but alas, it was inside of the rock and this mission was a bust. Now, with me being stubborn, I was not ready to give it up yet. I got back in the cockpit and tried to shoot it loose with the ship's remaining 2 repeaters, but again, it proved to be pointless and the day was soon to be lost. Frustrated, I took it out on some more of the NPCs that had spawned, and after killing yet another foe, I landed and tractored in the bodies I could, and some of the weapons I found on the ground, and also found that I could tractor large chunks of rock, but I dared not bring them on board because so far my reckless luck had held, and the last thing I needed was to lose it all over some chunks of concrete that would net me nothing. Overall, I was able to loot a few armor sets, weapons, and other supplies, so my next derelict run would hopefully go better so it would not be a total loss, but definitely not what I set out to do. In the end, I left the region without my objective complete, but I had learned a lot and would try not to make the same mistakes again the following day. So that concludes this first attempt. Now I have since recorded a couple more and will post those in order over the next couple of days, but I wanted to hear from you guys on this new type of video for me. I plan on making more of these videos as I play more either solo or with my org, so definitely stay tuned for the next part of this story as even more crazy things happen, and also, if you haven't already, like, subscribe, and comment on this video. I'm sure I will get many mocking comments pointing out all the things I did wrong, and like I said, I did learn quite a bit from these. Persistent entity streaming has turned out to be quite the learning curve, and many of the old tricks that used to work are no longer working, and so it's a whole new frontier out there, which I'm enjoying more and more, even when things go horribly wrong. Now remember to be kind to your fellow gamer, always think fast on your feet even when you've been knocked on your ass, and stay positive citizens.